Hi there, this is Steve Sailing Allison. I'm going to create a way of securing the batteries into the battery box, and to do this I'm going to get a plate made that will go against the end of the batteries and be attached to the outside of the box via various bolts, and then with threaded rods that are going to hold the battery in place. So in order to do this I need to make some measurements, and so that's what I'm going to start with. Then I'm going to draw up the plate. Hopefully as I do this you will then get to understand what it's going to look like, but I might do a sketch so that you can see what the direction of travel is. First off, let's measure a cell. So the battery consists of 16 cells which I've wired together in a 2x8 configuration. So I'm going to have an end plate which is going to go across the two here. What I need to do is measure the width and the height of a battery. So let's have a look. So the battery is 17.2 centimeters. The height is 20, maybe 20.1, bang on 20. Okay, because what's going to happen is I'll have the threaded rod with a pipe around it to insulate it. So the threaded rod will run across here, probably not where the strain relief is. So I think it just, well, because this I think is that pops open if the battery gets too hot, and that's probably quite important to leave free. So I probably need to have it running like there and similar on the other bank, but because I'm going to have the threaded rod with a pipe around it to provide some cushioning and some insulation, then it's not too critical to get the measurements perfect. Right, let's measure how far from the edge that needs to be. So that's 10.5 centimeters. Yeah, so if I have it running across there, similarly on the other one, that should hold it down. Cool. That's the first set of measures. Secondly, I have previously drilled some holes in the end plate of the battery box in order to provide a position for the threaded rods. I did this before figuring out really how I was going to do it, but I'm going to reuse those holes. So let's have a look. So the top one is that there. Let's do it this. So sorry, paint's still wet on this. I'm trying not to touch it. So that's, doesn't have to be precise of course because it's quite a long thread. That's 16 centimeters. Yeah. And the bottom one is 4 centimeters. So if I make on the plate the holes for the threaded rod at those distances, that shouldn't harm. The next thing I need to look at is how thick the plate should be. Now this is the motor controller, so which is fairly heavy, so I'm going to kind of steal the ideas from this. Now I think this is made of aluminium rather than stainless, but if I measure the width of this, the thickness of this, let's have a look nice and close. I'm saying, let's upside down, that is 3mm thickness, isn't it? Just about bang on. So if I can figure out how thick the stainless has to be to provide the equivalent strength, I'm probably in the right ballpark. I'm sure any mechanical engineers will be throwing up their hands in horror, but I found that just kind of copying other people is a lot easier than going back to first principles and working it out. Here's the engineering drawing for the battery retainer plate. It's actually the unfolded one. So I'm going to use the measurements that I've put on the drawing to make a template out of cardboard, so that I can check that I've got it the right size before I order it. Here's the cardboard prototype, cut out and folded. So these tabs are going to bolt onto the side wall and the bottom of the battery box, and then on the other side I've marked where the holes will be, where the threaded rod will come through and secure the battery. So if I check that against the batteries, then I'll be able to see that it's all going to fit. Here's a couple of batteries, and here is the plate. So as you can see, it's not a million miles out. It is a little bit higher than the batteries themselves and a little bit wider than the batteries. If we put it this way round, you can see where the holes are. So the idea is that I'm going to put threaded rod in, 8mm, and put some pipe around, some plastic pipe around the threaded rod, so that we get some insulation. And I've looked all that up, and what it means is that that gap needs to be 6mm, and you can see on here that's quite a lot more than 6mm. Now it might be just due to inaccuracies in my cutting of this prototype, but I am going to take this back and check all the dimensions. So I've remeasured the height of the batteries. That's now coming out as 201 rather than 200, so there's a 1mm out. And the width of the two batteries together is 348, which I think is what I measured before. So I'm just going to check all those dimensions, and if they all check out, and then I will order. Here's the drawing of the slightly reproportioned battery restraint plate. So I'm going to make a new prototype using a bit of cardboard, and just do a final check before ordering. So this is the cardboard prototype that I've made. Here's a couple of batteries. Let's see if it fits. So at first blush it looks okay, because we've got a little bit of overlap at the top and overlap at the side. So what I'm going to do is turn that around and have a look. I've marked the line for the holes where the threaded rods will go through, so this should give me a good idea about whether they're in the right place. There should be 6mm above the line of the battery. I'm just having a look at that now. Got my little rule. So that's more like 10mm now. I'm going to re-measure, just make sure I've got everything correct. So I've taken some measurements off my drawing. It's here, and this distance, which is the distance between the bottom and the line, which is the hole centers, should be 207mm. So I'm just going to measure that now, because it might be that I've just measured it up wrong. That's almost exactly right. Okay. And then, so I think it might be just a bit of a problem with probably the bend is not quite right. So yeah. Interesting. Let's see. think that the error is just to do with the way that this bend is made. So when I specify it to the manufacturers, what I'll make clear is that the distance is between that face and the hole centres. That's that line there. So between this face and that hole centres. Likewise, it's between that face and that line centre. Now I believe that the outside dimensions on metal folding are the ones that are easiest to control, so they should be able to get that right, and hopefully that should be right. If it's slightly over, then I can always pack it with some kind of material just to make sure that the batteries don't move about, but that looks good to go to me. The other thing that I need to do is measure this width, because I need to know how long the threaded rods are going to be. It appears that the maximum length you can easily buy them in is 500mm. You can get like sort of threaded nuts which will join them. I'd rather not have to do that, because you know they might make the whole thing wider than 12mm, which is what I've allowed for with the insulation. Anyway, so let's have a look. So these are I'm going to say 71. So guess what, 71 times 8 by my calculation is 5, so 7 eighths are 56, so plus 8, so that sounds like it's 568mm, which is annoyingly just a bit larger than we need. Of course there'll be an allowance for the extra because of the thickness of the wood and to put the nuts on the end. So basically you're talking about I'd need about 600mm. So either I need to find somewhere where I can buy longer threaded rod from and then cut it, or I need to join them, and I probably use like 200-300mm ones. So a bit of research to find that. Hi there. It's been a very wet day here in Scarborough. Last couple of days actually have been really wet. Not too bad at this precise moment, but more rain is on the way. Exciting news though, my new battery restraint, the battery plate, whatever you want to call it, has arrived, and I'm just going to see whether it's the right size. So let's have a look now. So here it is. I mean, it looks okay. So certainly the shape is as I imagined it, as I drew it. I can't help thinking it looks a bit small though. So I've got a couple of batteries, so let's have a quick look now. Here they are, batteries. So let's fit it on this side. There we go. And that looks just about perfect. So the holes are just above the level of the battery. So the threaded rod's going to go over there, and then I'm going to put some insulating pipe around the threaded rod, so that looks the right height. And the same at the end as well. So we've got just enough room at the end to get the threaded rod in. So yeah, looking good. Morning. It's a beautiful day down here at Scarborough Harbour. Finishing off the battery restraint, the thing that's going to hold the battery in place. It's taken a little bit longer than I thought. When it came to drilling the holes where the threaded rod is going to go in the side panel, one thing I decided to do was to fill in these holes that I had drilled earlier, which you can see are in the wrong place. And I used the thickened epoxy glue, and it was taking an age to go off, and I was just about to make a YouTube video on how rubbish it was when I reread the instructions and discovered it takes 5 to 6 hours to go off. So that's kind of knocked me back a day or so, but I'm now in the position where I can carry on with the battery restraint. So I've done the first fit, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these all four of the threaded rods so that they just fit in, which will make it a lot easier the subsequent reassembly. Here is the battery end plate in place, batteries all wired up, threaded rods in place with the pipe, which is kind of insulating and providing some cushioning. I had to make a cutout here to allow the positive and the negative leads to come out without kind of going through a steep angle. But apart from that, it's all worked well.